What is up, ladies and gentlemen? But most of all, you ladies out there, thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Syborg. Top 50 players in the NBA starts now. Split cow! I could not be more excited for this special episode where we start our 10-part series of the top 50 players in the NBA. We're going to break them down in groups of 5. I think that makes the most sense. So we have the opportunity to break down each player and give them some of the credence they deserve, but also not make the episode too long. So that's what we're going to do. 10-part series of the top 50 players headed into the 2022-2023 NBA season. I've been poring over this list. And I've been poring over the research. So please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss any more of these episodes because they're going to be bangers. They're going to be bangers. I have so much research over here, and you're going to see me look over at my laptop here because I have a lot of notes written in. But first, let's start with this. With this series, a lot of people, when they're making their lists, make it very take-heavy. It's saying, oh, LeBron's not even a top 10 player in the NBA. You know, things like that are just like, take-heavy will create reactions. My goal is to be a little more analysis heavy. So even if you disagree with a ranking, I broke it down kind of how I see the game. If you disagree with a ranking, that is all right. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. But what I want to do is talk about 50 players in the NBA because I don't think that, like 30 through 50 really get a lot of media coverage, get a lot of coverage in general. So I really wanted to break down their game and look at some of these guys that we don't get to hear talked about. We don't get to talk about that we don't hear covered. So that's kind of the premise behind this. Obviously, we're going to talk about, the top 10 guys in the league, and we're going to break that down too. So my whole point, if you disagree with a ranking, that's all right. Let me hear your comments below. Obviously, ranking 50 guys is super tough, and I've went back and forth with some of the rankings. So this is the best list I could come up with, in my opinion, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. So, don't rip me if you believe a ranking is incorrect. Just give me your thoughts on why it's incorrect. So let's start here. My criteria for the list, because you'll hear everyone debate rankings, but truly the reason that people disagree is just if their criteria is different. Is your criteria winning based? Is it production? Is it statistics? Is it playing on a winning team? Like all sorts of things like that. Is it potential? All sorts of things along those lines. To me, winning does give a massive boost. I don't see it as the most important. I don't see it as the only thing, but I see it as one of the most important things. You'll see from that the Warriors have 4 players that made the top 50 list and a couple that fell just outside. And a couple guys that I really like Christian Wood, Deaaron Fox didn't make this list because I haven't seen them be able to be productive for a winning franchise. Now, there's some guys obviously on the list that also aren't on winning teams, but I think their productivity makes it to where they can make that top 50. Production is the next thing. Obviously, statistics, what you do on the court, how your team fares with or without you, things of that nature. Improving your teammates. Now, this is going to come into play massively when we're talking about the 50th best player in the NBA, in my opinion, and a lot of other guys, because there are a lot of guys who produce for themselves or, can put up big stats, but producing for your teammates and making your team better, massively important. Obviously, talent and potential. There are some guys who might be a little higher on this list than you would have them. For instance, I am a massive Anthony Edwards fan. I think that going into this season, he's going to have a fantastic season. So he might be a little higher on my list than yours. But in my opinion, his potential and what I saw in the playoffs last year raises him a little bit. Your body of work does matter. You can't give me 1 year of greatness and make the top 5. Ja Morant was awesome last year. Let's see you do it again. So guys like LeBron, Kade, Steph Curry do get a little boost from their sustained greatness and some of the things they've done over the years. And then the final thing, I do put a little more value on wings than I do on big men. So a guy like DeAndre Ayton just missed out on the list just because I personally put a little more value in the wing position guards than I do in big men. Couple guys who just missed the list. Obviously, I mentioned Christian Wood, De'Aaron Fox. Scotty Barnes is a guy who might make it next year. Kristaps Porzingis, Fred VanVleet, and Julius Randle, who definitely would have been in it had you done this last year after he made his all-star team, and I believe he was All-NBA. I think he was All-NBA, but he just missed the list this year. He's had up and downs in his career. But without further ado, the number 50 player in the NBA. He wears number 23. He was also, in my opinion, the hardest guy to rank on this entire list. From the Golden State Warriors, Draymond Green. Draymond Green is 6'6", 230 pounds, coming off an NBA championship. If you would have looked at me and said, "You're crazy, you need to have Draymond 40," I maybe wouldn't disagree with you. If you also said, "Look at his statistics, he doesn't deserve to be in the top 50," I also maybe would agree with you. So that's why I thought Draymond Green was so difficult to rank. But ultimately, I believe he should make the list. And we're going to talk about Draymond Green and what makes him so great and what makes him so productive when it comes to a basketball team. He's truly the epitome of a guy who improves your teammates, and winning helps because his production is a little lower than a lot of the other guys on this list. Last year, Draymond Green averaged 7.5 points, 7.3 rebounds, and 7 assists. What Charles Barkley, I believe it was, calls the triple single. His value, though, is clear when you're looking at his value to Steph Curry and that entire Warriors system, not only on the defensive side, but also on the offensive side. If you see, last year, the Warriors with him were 34-12. Without him, they were 19-17. So without Draymond Green, they were about a 500 basketball team. With him, they were 34-12, which is wildly impressive in the regular season. In the playoffs, points went up to 8, rebounds and assists dropped a little bit. So he had average 8, 7.2, and 6.3. He is a 4-time All-Star, won his 4th title. Now, Draymond Green missed quite a few games last year. You kind of just heard me say that statistic of their record without him. But so when you're looking at defensive rating and who had the top in the league, Draymond Green actually had the best defensive rating in the league, but he didn't play enough minutes to qualify for that stat. So his defensive rating was 102.6. Gobert, who was the actual number one, was 103.2. So when you're talking about Draymond Green, you're talking about a generational defender. He calls himself the greatest defender of all time. In my opinion, he's not the greatest defender of all time. That is the jersey I'm wearing here. Hakeem Olajuwon, you could argue Dennis Rodman. You could also argue Bill Russell. But Draymond Green is certainly in that discussion for greatest defenders of our generation here that we're going through right now. Draymond Green, where does he do a lot of his work? He shot 70.2% field goal percentage from less than 5 feet. Now, you might say, yeah, from inside 5 feet, you want to be high, and that's very true. He shot higher percentage than Luka, actually, from under 5 feet. A little lower volume, obviously. And your kind of criteria, you kind of want to see your wings, your forwards, above 70% there. A guy we'll talk about, Giannis, is above that. LeBron's above that. Guys like that who really thrive in that under 5 feet range. So Draymond, people hate on his offense, but he's pretty efficient when you're talking about that under 5 feet range. The problem with Draymond, his weakness, I think we all know, his shooting has regressed to a degree. I think one of the things that are so important when we're talking about shooting, it's not always necessarily about the percentage you shoot. It's about the threat. Do you make other players guard you? Because even if you're shooting 35%, if they're guarding you, you can be a weapon to the offense because it creates more spacing. If Draymond's standing in the corner, the problem is a lot of teams aren't guarding him right now. If he can get back to where he's shooting okay from the three-point line, he'll really open up the rest of the offense to where Steph, Clay, Wiggins, guys like that can work a little more in the paint. So Draymond, we don't necessarily need you to shoot the lights out. We need you to be a threat to hit a shot. That's all we need from Draymond. Obviously, incredible defensive player. In the finals last year, really struggled the first, was it 3 or 4 games? At one point, he had more fouls than points, or more fouls than field goals made. So Draymond Green, almost got benched to start that finals, and then kind of flipped a switch, and he was very good to end that final. So when we're talking about Draymond Green, hard guy to rank. Winning, intangibles, leadership, making your team better really helped Draymond Green. Production's a little low, and that's why he comes in as the 50th best player in the NBA. Let's move on. Number 49, second-year player, one of the few very young guys on this list, Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons. He comes in at 6 foot 8 inches, which pretty tall for a guard, 220 pounds. Cade Cunningham, number 1 pick out of Oklahoma State. Last year was his rookie year, so he's coming into his second NBA season. One thing I should have mentioned, we're not having any rookies on this list. Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, Jabari Smith, Jaden Ivey. None of those guys are going to make the list. I want to see him in the NBA before I put him in a top 50 list. But Cade Cunningham last year averaged 17.4 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 5.6 assists. Now, one of the things you're talking about when you're looking at Cade Cunningham, shot 41.6% from the field. That's pretty poor. We'd like to see that number rise, and we'll talk about that here in a second. The thing about Cade Cunningham is he is a true modern-day point guard. You're talking about a guy who is big, he's athletic, he's skilled, he's very smart, good head on his shoulders, seems like a good teammate. Everything you want in a player is Cade Cunningham, and he's really a modern version of what you want in the NBA. A guy who can, do a lot of things and also has size to where he could be a really good defender at some point in his career. When you're looking at Cade's year last year, obviously you might say Cade didn't show enough last year to make the top 50. In my opinion, what we saw from February 16th off, they had a game against Boston that they actually won. From that point on, Cade Cunningham flipped a switch. And if you look at his stats from then on, he played much better basketball from February 16th on to the end of the season. And I expect that's what we see coming into this next season, because they added a couple players. They added Jaden Ivey, 4th overall pick, who I am a massive fan of. I was watching film of all the rookies, and Jaden Ivey was the one who really popped to me. I really am excited to watch this backcourt duo. You have Sadiq Bey on the squad, Marvin Bagley. They made a trade with the Knicks, I think, for Nerlens Noel and Alec Burks. So Pistons, might not be title contenders, but they're going to start to see improvement, and you're going to see a guy like Cade Cunningham really pop. Cade Cunningham, defensively, pretty poor. Last year had a defensive rating of 113.1. Obviously, that's better than a guy like Trae Young. So he's not a complete liability. But with his size and a bit athletic ability, there's a lot of room for improvement, a potential for Cade Cunningham to be a good guard defender. That's what we hope to see. Now, when we're talking about Cade Cunningham, when you're looking at where he does a lot of his damage, Cade really struggles from the 5 to 9 feet range. Cade shot 36.2%. That's a lot of the area where you see little floaters, little push shots for a lot of guards. You see this be a really effective tool for guys like Kyrie Irving, Trae Young, Steph Curry, Luka. That area they really thrive in. So what we need to see from Cade Cunningham is improvement in that area, and I imagine that we will, because he seems like a guy who works really hard. He moves his feet well. Really smart. Area of improvement for Cade Cunningham, kind of talked about it. Obviously, we want to see a little better on defense, but one of the things about defense and having a poor defensive rating, that does matter a lot who's around you. And it also matters how competitive your team is, because when you're talking about defense, it's 70% willpower and want to and just playing hard. And when your team really sucks and you're not winning a lot of ball games, sometimes defense is a little harder. So when you're looking at a guy like Donovan Mitchell last year in the playoffs, has he been an excellent defender in his career? No, I'm not saying that. But in the playoffs, he looked significantly worse than he had at any other point in his career. Maybe he didn't think his team had a chance. And if you're not playing with that same fire, defensively, you're going to drop a little bit. So as the Pistons get more competitive, I do expect to see Cade Cunningham improve on that front. Obviously, the other area of improvement, efficiency. We see the talent. We see the big games. We need consistency from 2 and from 3 in that 5 to 9 foot range, and then from the 3-point line. Cade Cunningham's got to improve as far as just hitting his shots. Gonna be awesome. I can't wait to watch the Pistons next year, which something I never thought I'd say. Let's move on. Number 48, RJ Barrett of the New York Knicks. He's 6'6". Isn't that wild that Cade Cunningham's 6'8", because RJ Barrett and Draymond Green are both 6'6"? RJ Barrett, 6'6", 214 pounds of the New York Knicks. Now, here's a guy that I also kind of went back and forth on, because there are things I really like from RJ Barrett, and there are times where I'm like, you almost don't notice him on the court, but he took a real step forward last year. Another guy who struggles with efficiency. Last year averaged 20 points, 5.8 rebounds, 3 assists. 41% field goal percentage, though. That's pretty low. We just talked about Cade Cunningham. RJ Barrett just signed a 4-year, $120 million contract. My guy got the bag. Super excited for him. RJ Barrett out of Duke. 3rd overall pick. If you remember, it was Zion, John Morant, and the 3rd of those big 3 was RJ Barrett. He's not on the level of those other 2, but he's built himself into a nice player in the NBA. When you look at his stats, his points per game has increased every year that he's been in the league. So if he keeps heading in that direction, if next year he's a 22 to 23 point scorer, you're talking about a guy who is working his way to, could he be the second best player on a real team, as far as a team that's competing for conference finals, things like that. Again, another guy who, and one of the things that you'll notice when we're talking about any of these guys in the bottom 10 of my list here, they're all going to have some weaknesses. So if you want to say there's no way Cade Cunningham's in the top 50, he doesn't shoot good enough percentage. Okay, well, I think we could point out flaws in everyone's games, and we're going to talk about those. But RJ Barrett, pretty average defender. When you're looking at his defensive rating, things like that, pretty average defender. But again, another guy who's strong, moves well, athletic, has the potential to be a very good defender. And when you do look, the Knicks defense does improve with RJ Barrett on the court. His individual defensive rating isn't spectacular, but their defense does get better when RJ Barrett plays. And in his 2nd year with Coach Thibodeau, they had a very good defense. So when you're talking about RJ Barrett, potential to be a very good defender, the thing you got to remember with him, he's only 22 years old. So very young. Don't write him off yet, because I think that this guy has a lot of potential. And that's the thing you got to remember with a lot of guys in the league nowadays. They might be in the league for 4 years, and they're only like 23 years old, which is just wild. One thing that I think is interesting that the Knicks did this offseason, they added another consistent playmaker in Jalen Brunson. They thought they were hoping they were getting that with a guy like Kemba Walker. Evan Fournier didn't really pan out like they had hoped, but adding Jalen Brunson should allow RJ Barrett to play off ball a little bit more, because he's not really a fantastic passer. He's okay at it, but he'll be in that more scoring wing role where I think RJ Barrett really thrives, because he's a very good scorer, slasher, finisher. Last year, he ISO'd 106 times and was 36% on those possessions. So that's what I was just talking about when you're looking at adding Jalen Brunson and the value of that. RJ Barrett is not good at isolation basketball. That's okay. Not every player needs to be ISO heavy. Not every player in the league is great at it. Steph Curry shoots 53% on ISOs. KD is 51.3%. So just a little point of reference when we're talking about 36% on the ISO. Steph and KD, they're pushing over 50%. So that's what when you're talking about top ISO players in the league, those are the kind of guys there. Obviously, again, area of opportunity for him, efficiency. from 2 and from 3. We see the talent in you, RJ Barrett. We see the skill. We see the good games. But we just need to work on that consistency. We need you to play good night after night. Obviously, you're going to have bad games, but we want to see those percentages rise. Can you go from 41% this year? Can you give me 45? Can you give me 22 to 24 points a game? And I think that would be a big step forward for RJ Barrett. And you're starting to talk about, is he an all-star level player? Let's move on to the number 47 player in the NBA of the Oklahoma City Thunder, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai Gilgeous is also 6'6". We could just call this these five guys I'm talking about today the 6'6" players, because 3 of the 5 are. He's 6'6", 180 pounds. That's pretty skinny. Shai Gilgeous is a guy that I really, really like. I'm a big fan of watching him play. And one of the worst things to happen in the offseason was seeing Chet Holmgren go down with that injury, because I was so excited to watch Shai play with a real player, because he hasn't really had many great players in his career. He played with Chris Paul briefly that one year, but now you're hoping that, as they have Josh Giddey, who's a nice young player, and if Chet comes back, if they suck this year, they maybe get another good draft pick. The Thunder are hopefully building something really nice. Now, here's a guy who production is very high. So that's what really helped him on this list when you're talking about comparing him to RJ Barrett, Cade Cunningham. Shai Gilgeous averaged 24.5 points, 5 rebounds, and 5.9 assists, shooting 45.3% from the field. Now, you might say, how is Shai not higher with that? Again, winning matters. It drops him a little bit. He's been on a bottom dweller for pretty much his entire career. I don't blame him for that, but the question is, would he be as productive on a winning basketball team? If you talk to a lot of guys who play hoops, guys who played at the college level, NBA level, one of the things that they talk about is sometimes when you look at their statistics in certain years, they have really high statistics when their team really sucked. And when they got on a team that was a little more talented, a team that could actually compete, you see their statistics drop as they struggle to find how to fit into a winning style of basketball, because that losing, you can take shots maybe you wouldn't take on a winning team, all sorts of things like that. You can try things you wouldn't otherwise. So Shai Gilgeous, I really want to see him with some good players. I want to see him competing for a playoff spot. And that's what we want to see from Shai. Now, shoots 45% from the field. He is a very poor three-point shooter, shot 30%. As a point guard, we would love to see you shoot a little higher. In March, so here is one of the things that we really want to look forward to, though. In March, which I think was the last month of the season, I think the playoffs start in April, he averaged 29 points, 7.5 assists, 5.8 rebounds, and shot 39.5% from 3. If we see that from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, this is a top 25 player in the NBA. This is an absolute stud. 29, 7.5, and 5.8 is unreal stats. If he can give us that, for a season or anything close to that, unbelievable. We love to see that at the end of the season, because that's building momentum into the next year. So when I'm making this ranking and I'm talking about guys going into next season, how you finished last year matters. That's why Cade Cunningham made the list. He started to play really well down the stretch. Shai really played well down the stretch. Now, the thing that's a little concerning about that, even with that entire month shooting 40% from 3, he still only shot 30% from the season. Again, not a very good on-ball defender, but he has the size and the length to do so. He moves well. Again, he's long. He averaged 1.3 steals, which is pretty solid, because Shai is very good in transition. So when he gets those steals, he can run out in transition and really be an effective basketball player. 44% of his shots are pull-ups, which is really high. Pull-up jump shots are the toughest shots in the NBA. Catch and shoot, anything in the post, layups, anything around there, floaters, those are much easier shot than pull-up threes. A lot of times they're contested or they're coming off a screen. You got to balance, you got to set your feet, you got to look at the rim, you got to knock those down. Those are tough shots. So would love to see a little easier shot selection But when he doesn't have great players around him, sometimes you got to force stuff. You got to take shots that maybe are a little more difficult because the defense is focused on you. And I would rather have Shai taking those shots than some of the other players on his team. He's very efficient inside of 10 feet, so he's a very good finisher. He's a very good passer and runs the offense again. It really was the focus of the defense last year. So hopefully as Giddey improves, once we get Chet back, it'll be really interesting to see what happens with Shai. Again, area of improvement here. We're going to end this. We're going to have an area of improvement with every player that we talk about on this list. With him, it's on-ball defense. It's keeping your guy in front of you, making sure you're effective on-ball defender. One of the things we talked about with a couple of these other guys, though, when your team's not playing winning basketball, it's harder to defend because it requires intensity. And then we just need the three-point shooting to improve a little bit. Can you take me from 30? You don't even need to be the 39, but could you give me 35%? Could you turn yourself into an average three-point shooter? Let's move on to the final player we're going to talk about for today. One of my favorite players in the league, one of the most underrated players in the NBA, a guy who most of us won't watch one of his games this season, not a single game, because he plays for the Indiana Pacers. Tyrese Haliburton, traded from the Sacramento Kings. He's 6'5", 185 pounds. So another 6 foot. Everyone else been 6'6". He broke the mold and is 6'5". But last year averaged 15.3 points, 4 rebounds, and 8.2 assists on 50.2% shooting. You might say, why is he so high on your list? This man is an elite passer. 8.2 assists is very solid. And again, when we're talking about ending the season, Tyrese Halliburton got traded from Sacramento to Indiana. In those games, he averaged 17.5 points. Points were up, 9.6 assists, and 4.3 rebounds, including he had a 17 assist game. Things like that don't happen for a reason. I love point guards who can direct an offense, who can lead an offense, get guys in their spots. You know, not necessarily that assists show everything, but because I think like guys like Russell Westbrook had a little inflated assist numbers, but Tyrese Halliburton is great as a point guard. Could he develop into a guy who can lead a championship level offense? I believe he could. Probably Indiana's got to get some players before we, start talking about something like that. But to me, there's so much value in a guy who can average 9.6 assists. Almost 10 assists a game is very impressive to me. He's an elite three-point shooter with elite efficiency. Like I said, shot 50.2% from the field, and then from three, shot 41.6% when he was with Indiana. You're talking about a guy who is efficient at scoring, a good passer, a good rebounder, good length, good size. Another kind of savvy defender, guy who gets steals. Would like to see his on-ball defense improve a little bit as his defensive rating was low. Again, playing on a losing team. A common theme we're seeing here. I wanted to talk about that. I think that was the dumbest. I still don't fully grasp what the Kings were doing in that trade. When they got Domantas Sabonis and gave up Buddy Hield and Tyrese Haliburton. Like I said, I'm a big Haliburton fan, and we'll see Sabonis show up a little higher on this list. But Haliburton's really young, and he's one of the very few guys that really wanted to play in Sacramento. He loved playing in Sacramento, and if you hear him on podcasts, he talks about that, how much he loved playing there. So it really boggled my mind that they were willing to get rid of him. But again, that's what the Kings do. They don't do things that the rest of the NBA world understands. If you're going to make a trade, try to trade with the Kings, because you're often going to take advantage of them. In my opinion, the Pacers this year should get rid of Buddy Hield, should get rid of Miles Turner, and fully tank and try to go in on the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, a guy we talked about a lot on this podcast. But I think if you're the Pacers, I really want to take a chance at, could you build a real contender if you get a guy like Victor Wembanyama to play alongside Tyrese Haliburton? And I like Chris Duarte, who I think was a rookie last year. He's a young player that they added. He's a stud. Again, when you're talking about Haliburton, potential to be a great player on a winning squad, And that's what I like. I think that things like that translate. The scoring, we talked about Shai. You worry, does the 25 points per game, does that translate to a winning squad? I know that the passing playmaking of Tyrese Halliburton translates to winning basketball. I know that if he has quality players around him, he could compete and help that team compete for great things. So we were talking about Tyrese Halliburton. Where's his area of opportunity? Thing we like to see him improve next year. Because of the lacking players around him, I want to see a little more aggression. I want to see him take a few more shots. Even if your efficiency drops from 51%, if it drops to 49%, but your points per game go up because you're being more aggressive, you don't have guys around you that you have to get the basketball to. You're one of the best 3 scorers on your team. Be aggressive, take shots. We want to see that from Tyrese Halliburton. And we want to see him develop some of those other skill sets beyond the playmaking part so that when they are competing and you need a big bucket, you can get that from Tyrese Halliburton, because I believe he has that potential in his game. And then obviously we want to see a little improvement on the defensive end of the court. That's all we got for 50 through 46. So let's recap. Draymond Green at 50, Cade Cunningham at 49, RJ Barrett at 48. At 47, I had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and at 46, Tyrese Halliburton. In every couple days, we're going to release this group of 5 players, and next video, which should come out 2 days from now, will be 45 through 41. And I'm really excited about the series. So make sure that you're subscribed so we can keep talking about this. We're going to break down more guys' games. These videos are going to be a little longer. It looks like this one's been over 30 minutes, but appreciate y'all watching. We got hoops coming soon. It's only like 20 something days away. So please take a second to like and subscribe. Syborg out.